So, this is a biggie. Do health problems justify anxiety? Now, I get this question fairly often in one form or another. And the answer to this question actually, I think, will benefit anybody who struggles with anxiety. Whether your anxiety is focused on health issues or not, I think what I'll say today is really going to illustrate the way to separate the issue from the anxiety. So, for those of you who know me, you know I try to give a fairly balanced view on issues, and I think I will do that today. And for those of you who don't know me, I was a psychotherapist for 20 years, specializing in anxiety prior to starting this YouTube channel and developing online courses. So, by the way, if you do find this useful, please do hit that like button. It's a big help, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks. So, I want to start by saying that I think it's often necessary to differentiate between productive worry and unproductive worry. And then, even within unproductive worry, there can be worry about something, and we know it's not productive, but we're worried a little bit, right? But it doesn't turn into full blown anxiety. It doesn't turn into a panic attack. It doesn't plague us on and on and on. So, it's pretty normal to have some degree of anxiety, particularly when you're first diagnosed with something, or if you are struggling with a health issue and there doesn't seem to be an easy answer. Sure, it is very normal to have some worry. Now, a small amount of anxiety can actually be very motivating in areas other than health, right? If we're a little bit anxious about a test coming up, we might study harder. If we're a little bit anxious, the adrenaline we produce can help us focus. It can also give us the energy to address the problem. Too much anxiety can shut us down totally. It can make us overly irritable and impossible to live with, even for ourselves, right? Like jumping out of our skins with irritability. So for this talk today, that's one of the things is like the degree of anxiety, right? As well as the concept of productive versus non-productive, right? If I'm worried about something and there is something I can do about it, that's a productive worry, right? So going for our regular checkups, very good thing to do. I ski, some of you know that. So I wear a helmet, right? There is something I can do. But actually, when I put my helmet on now, I don't even really think about falling. It's just sort of automatic. I just wear the helmet. So there are plenty of things that make sense for us to do and have some concern about. But for a lot of people who suffer with health anxiety, they worry about every single twitch in the body, every ache and pain. Anything that feels a little odd goes into an entire story about all the things that could go wrong. And then sometimes people who have chronic pain and chronic illness actually have an anxiety disorder on top of that. And the number one thing you can do if you're in that situation is to separate the anxiety disorder from the health issues. All right, this is where people have a pretty tough time accepting this and integrating this. So one of the comments that I received recently was from a woman who basically was asking like, how can I get over anxiety if I have these health issues? And sometimes things will happen and it will send me into a full-blown panic attack. So I know this might sound harsh, and I don't mean it that way. But honestly, that happens if you have a panic disorder. So, having a panic attack, it's probably part of a panic disorder, and one won't recover from a panic disorder unless one sees it as a separate issue. All right, let me see if I can explain that again. You can have all sorts of health issues, and you can have a sort of a worry or a concern. You can follow productive steps. But if it is totally preoccupying you and you're worrying about it all the time and there's nothing you can do, that indicates an anxiety disorder. Now, I need to jump back in here just to clarify something because nothing in this is meant to diagnose. I'm more giving you pointers of what to think about or consider But diagnosis is definitely a more complicated process that requires a professional. So I know I made that sound a little bit too simple. So just wanted to clarify that. I also just want to say that health anxiety is a hugely painful issue, and I really don't want to come across as if I'm minimizing it because believe me, I'm not. And I know that a lot of people with health anxiety do feel that others in their family minimize it, doctors minimize it, and that's not my intent. My intent is to help point you in the direction to begin to address it so you can live more joyfully. Okay, now with all anxiety disorders, all of them, until we really learn this, we think our anxiety is caused by something outside of us, or in the case of health issues, we think the anxiety is caused by a particular ache and pain or a particular problem we're having. But no, the anxiety lives on its own and it attaches to something to make us anxious. So I have a video, it's an old video at this point, on generalized anxiety disorder. And I talk about how people with generalized anxiety disorder will be like, well, I'm anxious because this is happening and this and this and this. And they name 4 things outside of themselves. And then when this one goes away, then they worry about those 3. And then another one pops in. And then 3 of those go away. And then they're worried about this one. And then 4 more pop in. So it never goes away. There's always something to worry about if we have an anxiety disorder. So the cure is to begin to realize this anxiety lives within me. It is not caused by this, this, or this. Health anxiety, a little more complicated, a little bit harder to grasp because it's like, yeah, but it's happening inside me and it's something and it's blah, blah, blah. Yet there are people who have very high extreme health anxiety whose health issues are not severe. And then there are people who have incredibly severe health issues who don't have anxiety. And another key point I want to make today is that an excessive anxiety response is pumping adrenaline and cortisol into your body, priming your body to run away from a saber-toothed tiger that doesn't exist. So our extreme anxiety response is actually kind of like an old response, like from humans a long time ago, because most of the things that make us anxious today do not require an extreme fight, flight, or freeze response. So if we're having an extreme fight, flight, or freeze response about an ache or a pain, or something happening in a relationship, or a struggle that a loved one is going through, it isn't correlated. It really isn't correlated. So you really have to separate it. You really have to separate that anxiety response from what's happening and calm the anxiety response. So the recent comment also said, how does positive thinking help with my health issues and my anxiety about my health issues? So I'm going to address that. But before I do want to mention that I'm an affiliate of Virtual EMDR. I no longer provide psychotherapy. I no longer do EMDR, but Virtual EMDR is an online service that assists you with the process of doing EMDR. And EMDR, I believe, is super effective treatment for anxiety. So if you do have health anxiety, somatization, you might want to look for an EMDR therapist. And for people who are fairly well regulated and either don't have access to an EMDR therapist or like to do things on their own, Virtual EMDR is an awesome service to try. I'm an affiliate, so using my link does support this channel and also gives you a discount. So the link is in the description to this video, and I'll also show it here. Okay, so the question about positive thinking was an interesting one for me because I don't think that I usually emphasize positive thinking. I don't think that's really the focus of the work that I have done and what I have talked about on the channel, because when we use cognitive behavioral techniques or cognitive reframing, it's not really about positive thinking. It's about exposing the lies we tell ourselves. It's about exposing the cognitive distortions. It's about addressing the biases that our brain has that actually aren't tied to reality. So, separating an anxiety response from the physical issue that you're dealing with doesn't really have anything to do with positive thinking. It simply is separating it, right? And then thinking about the catastrophizing that can come from a physical issue. That is identifying a cognitive distortion, right? Catastrophizing is a cognitive distortion. It's like going to like the worst possible case. So I'm not saying like go to the best possible case. I'm just saying don't go to the worst possible case, because when you do that, you are fully imagining it. Your body on some level is experiencing it as if it's actually happening. So you're causing yourself unnecessary pain and facilitating the anxiety disorder. So I hope that makes sense about how I don't really see this as positive thinking. I see it as actually more realistic. Right? If I have a problem and there's something I can do about it, I can take the steps to do it. If there's a problem and there's nothing I can do about it, all that energy I'm putting into thinking and worrying and thinking and worrying and going over and over and over and over is a waste of my energy. So, an example, given my skin, I have to go to the dermatologist every 6 months for a full checkup. And if I see something weird, I have to have it checked out fairly quickly. And I've had a number of biopsies that have turned out to be something that had to be removed, but everything's been caught early enough, thank goodness. But in between the time that, something might get sliced off me, right, and sent to the lab, I don't have to think about it. From that point till I get the results back, I actually don't have to think about it. And as I said, most people would maybe have a little bit of worry about it, maybe a little bit of a concern. For me, I've done it so much, and even when it has ended up being something, right? You just don't even have to think about it anymore. It's not productive. That doesn't mean it's positive thinking or unrealistic thinking. Okay, I'm going to summarize here because I know I went through a lot of stuff. And I also know people always want solutions out of the video. So I am going to give a couple of hints at the end of this, so do watch to the end. But it is also hard to cover an entire topic like this in a relatively short YouTube video. So to summarize, paying attention to whether your worry is productive or unproductive, point number one. Paying attention to the degree of anxiety is point number two. Is it a mild amount that can be motivating? Or is it debilitating and ruining your life? In which case, it's an anxiety disorder, most likely. Okay, not diagnosing anything here, but just giving you a few hints to think about. Number three, are you catastrophizing? Are you taking a minor event and letting yourself go to, the worst possible result here? Number four, which is really the most important, see your anxiety as separate from your health issue. If you have generalized anxiety, see your anxiety as separate from the external things you're worried about. If you're always anxious about a loved one who's not doing well, see your anxiety as separate from how your loved one is doing. Without seeing that separation, it isn't possible to deal with your anxiety because you're looking for the solution in the wrong place. You're looking for the solution to be these problems go away, this person gets his act together, or her act, or their act, right? Or these health issues go away. So you're looking for your anxiety to be cured by something that is not going to cure your anxiety. What will? I have a ton of videos on anxiety. And even if your focus is health issues, I'd recommend watching a bunch of them and implementing the techniques. Learning to calm that stress response, whether it's through diaphragmatic breathing, yoga, nature walks, there's many ways. Calming that anxiety response is going to be a piece of it. Learning emotional regulation. And also, one thing I talk about a fair amount, identifying the negative core beliefs that are causing your thinking to be this way. Now, some of your thinking is this way because you're human and our minds do this kind of thing. They really do. but some of it is also due to some type of probably early negative core belief. And I do have a free PDF called Transform Your Negative Core Belief. People have found it very, very helpful. It's free. You can download it. Again, link in the description. But identifying your negative core belief, it might be that you're not safe, right? It might be that you're somehow defective. There's all sorts of negative core beliefs that get ingrained in us as children, and then they come to fruition in one problem or another, unfortunately, as adults. So I really encourage you to take the steps. Therapy can help, EMDR, different somatic techniques, right? I encourage you to address the anxiety because that will improve your life. Do hit that like button if you found this useful. Do subscribe for more content. Leave me comments. Let me know what you thought of this. If you struggle with health anxiety, let me know. Did this feel harsh? Did this feel unhelpful? Did it feel helpful? Very curious. Love to hear from you. And as you can tell, if you ask a question, I sometimes do a video on it. Alrighty, hang in there.